Yeah, I think the Employment Rights Bill is a fascinating place to start. It has already drawn an awful lot of commentary, and as it continues to pass through the Commons, it's only going to attract more and more commentary. So anything that we say now will be a snapshot based on what is the application now. But as a piece of legislation, I think it is deeply flawed. Um, and it's deeply flawed not just because of poor drafting, but also because I think it's allowed itself to become increasingly politicized. And I think that's a major problem for any primary piece of legislation, especially one which is so significant in that it's to deal with employment,
Yeah.
which impacts every sector, public, private, charity, everything else throughout the United Kingdom, either directly or indirectly, and which then has a secondary and tertiary impact through case law, etc. And what this bill has done, to my mind, um, has replicated some of the electoral pledges which the Labour government placed in its manifesto pre-election, but in its first 100 days, which everybody indicated they would try and put out a bill, they have put out a bill which has only faced criticism, not just from the ineffective opposition, because the Tory opposition is too small to keep this anything other than being a politicised piece of legislation, but the RPC, the Regulatory Policy Committee, has challenged it. The Labour government brought out an amendment to its own policy within a week of it, or within a week of the bill being issued, and that was a 58-page document rectifying and clarifying elements of what it had produced. So we have, as we speak today, Connor, we have a need for a reform of employment legislation, but we have a deeply unhappy vehicle which is seeking to do that. And I think the really frustrating thing about it is that there's an awful lot within the bill which is really positive,
Yeah.
really necessary, and really good for business, and more importantly, really good for the individual, like pregnant workers, etc. The returning mother, there are additional rights in there which are absolutely right and good. But those are somewhat lost in some of the more headline grabbing elements, which are also those which haven't had a proper impact assessment conducted on it. And those are the issues which are going to take up more and more airtime as it passes through the Commons, and ultimately potentially make for bad law. And that's a real worry with the Employment Rights Bill. And here's a great example. It was initially indicated that there were going to be day one unfair dismissal rights. Now, just to put that in context, at the moment, unfair dismissal rights in the UK are after 2 years service. In Northern Ireland, it's after 12 months service. So there was already a disparity which had landed between the two principal jurisdictions as a consequence of the previous piece of legislation, which is the Employment Rights Act 1996, which has served us really well for 30 years. But with these day one rights, the unfair dismissal rights, both those thresholds were being reduced from 24 months to 12 months, which created massive issues for business and industry. And a week later, the government said, well, we didn't really mean day one rights. What we meant was day one rights once you satisfactorily complete a probationary period. And then they said, in the probationary period can be as much as 9 months long. So we don't actually have day one rights. We have 9 months plus 1 day rights, potentially, for unfair dismissal, unless and until they clarify this as it works through the Commons. So issues.